Welcome to Yuba Justice, the podcast where we take you inside the world of justice in Yuba County. Old cases and cold cases, updates on major crimes, issues and trends that we're seeing that will affect your public safety. We're your hosts.
Hi, I'm Wendell Anderson, the Yuba County Sheriff.
And I'm Clint Curry, the District Attorney.
So this is our first podcast. We've been talking about doing this for a little while. We just wanted to give the constituents here in Yuba County a little bit of information from inside our offices and kind of show you two of the cogs of the justice wheel here.
There's so much that goes on behind the scenes and so many good stories that just don't get told, and we want to bring some of those to you.
Absolutely, and as as Clint alluded to, we're going to talk about some old cases, some of our cold cases, and some of the things that are going on, some of the things that are impacting you, and hopefully, as this podcast continues, we can get some feedback from members of the public about issues that are concerning you and your communities, and try to address those issues here for you.
And we would definitely like to hear from you, and you can reach out to us on Facebook, email, any of our social media platforms. If you have a question, topic that you want to see discussed, we more than welcome those. For today, though, we thought we'd start with a little bit of interviewing and getting to know who are these jokers besides a guy with gray hair and a guy pretty much bald, no hair. Yeah, not everyone can have a perfect head though.
That's right. That's
why I have hair.
So Clint, what brought you into? Obviously, you've been an attorney for a while. What made you decide to run for and get elected for the Yuba County DA's?
Well, I was in the Sutter County DA's office. I'd served about 10 years, and Pat McGrath decided to retire. And I'm from here. I grew up in Yuba and Sutter. I've lived in Yuba City, Marysville, lived up in the foothills, kind of all over. But here, this is home. So when the job came up, it was something that I wanted to do to be able to serve the community.
Well, I, for one, am glad you chose to do that. It's in all sincerity. Clint has been a tremendous partner for public safety, and I think in today's day and age especially, it's so important to have somebody who's not afraid, to not push the limits, but at least, have an impact on the community with the enforcement of the violations that you can. It's so hard these days to be able to prosecute people, to hold them accountable, but I know that you do your best, so thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you for what you do. And so part of our goal here is to help the community understand the relationship, right?
Yeah.
So you arrest someone on the street for committing a crime, and how long can you hold them before the DA gets involved?
Well, it's 48 hours now. They have to be appear before the courts in 48 hours. And, obviously it depends on the charges, but and the bail schedule. They have a right to bail. Everybody always has a right to bail. So there are a lot of things that people don't know behind the scenes that impact how long we can keep folks in jail, how long you can keep them in jail. The bail schedule being what it is.
If we can keep them in jail. So, did you grow up here?
I did. So I grew up out in Linda, born and raised. Well, I was actually born in Yuba City. They didn't have
What?
They didn't have a maternity ward here at
Fremont Hospital?
Fremont Hospital. Born and raised. Went to local schools, and I actually got started in law enforcement pretty late in life, when I was about 28 years old.
Oh, wow. What did you do before that?
Oh, a lot of different things. I worked construction. I worked for the family business. My father owned and operated an auto dismantling yard in South County, and he ultimately sold that. I stayed on and managed it for the new owners, and then ultimately decided that I wanted to go into law enforcement.
Okay, so how did that happen? You're managing a dismantling yard. You've done some construction, and all of a sudden, or tell us, how did that happen?
Well, I had a couple friends that were involved that worked here at the Sheriff's Department. I think they just recruited me. We had a football game that year, so they wanted me to play football for them.
The truth comes out.
So I developed friendships with people here at the Sheriff's Department, and ultimately decided that I wanted to pursue a career in law enforcement. I started out as a reserve, so I went to the academy, became a reserve here. Actually, became a reserve in about 1996.
Were you still managing?
Still
Okay.
working at the wrecking yard. I went to the academy at night after work, and it didn't take me long to get hooked. When I became a reserve, I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. Chasing bad guys, locking bad guys up, and it was an exciting job, and well, I couldn't believe they got paid to do it. So.
Okay, so 96 you became a reserve.
Right.
And then how did it progress from there?
So at 96, so the modular format is what I was going through at Yuba College. So it was about a 2-year process. So you had to go, because it was part-time, it was at night. So the modules were offered about every semester. So I continued going, and once I completed the basic police academy, I put in my application for Yuba County. Ultimately got a job as a community service officer initially, full-time job.
That's a tough job too.
It was tough. I enjoyed it. It helped me to grow, learn how to write reports, conduct investigations. And then from there, when there was an opening and I was able to, I moved into the position of deputy sheriff.
And so what year was that?
1998, I became a full-time deputy sheriff here, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So Yuba County your whole career?
My whole career. Yeah, it's funny, on the day that Sheriff Gary Tyndall offered me a job, I had an interview with the chief of police in Lincoln, PD, and it had been my goal to come to work here. There weren't many vacancies at that time, and so Sheriff Tyndall offered me the job, and I canceled my appointment with the Lincoln PD chief, and
That's loyalty.
Yep. And I've been here ever since. So.
Oh, that's amazing. So.
Yeah, it's been a good career. I never thought I would be the sheriff of the county. I mean, I grew up out on the streets of West Linda, much different time then, but
right, yeah.
It was a good place to grow up. It was a good community, and I'm blessed that I've had the opportunity to give back to Yuba County.
So back in the day, you could actually just walk down the street with a .22 or a shotgun and go hunting. Outside. Straight out of the house.
That describes my childhood, yeah. So I would leave from my house with, a bag of duck decoys and my shotgun and walk to the river bottoms and go hunting. Different time, it's changed a lot.
So what did you start out in your career? So now you're not a reserve anymore, you're a full-time deputy. How did you start, and then how does that differ, or how is it the same as today?
Well, I think it's, it's the same. The job is the same. The population obviously has grown. We're a little busier in different ways, but the job has always been public safety and protecting the public, and getting those. I joked about it earlier, but just there are people out there who victimize our communities. Just trying to protect them from those people. Hold those people accountable. It's much easier to have that accountability piece. Or we had that accountability piece back then. Law enforcement has changed over, in the past 25 years. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, that's true. So did you in the late '90s, was it a lot of call to call, or did you have time to do your own stuff?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was always very proactive. It's always been a very busy place, but we were always very proactive. I think. It was a balance. So, you try to be proactive when you can, but we always were short-staffed. We always needed equipment, needed the tools to do our job. The sheriffs that I've worked for have been great, and they've provided the resources that we need to the best of their ability. But, Yuba County has always been, back when I was coming up as a deputy and a sergeant, it was a joke. It was known as the training grounds, right? So
right.
If you worked patrol here in Yuba County for 2 years, you probably got, a decade worth of experience in other places. I mean, because we just dealt with so much on the streets. And
well, it's a big county too, so you're out on your own in a lot of places.
Yeah, so, in the middle of the night, if you're called up to Strawberry Valley, for instance, you're an hour and a half away, potentially, from somebody in the south part of the county, so.
And maybe you've got radio communications and maybe not.
I remember distinctly working graveyard shift with, 2 other deputies and a sergeant at times to
Wow.
cover the entire county. And it was a challenge, but we did it, we didn't know any better, so we just did the job.
Right. Well,
You
you do what you gotta do, right?
There's nothing like being in an altercation with somebody you're trying to take into custody and hearing sirens coming from miles away, to back you. And, it was a sign of the times. It was the resources that we had, and we made do.
So, I mean, how much better are we now? I mean,
Well-
obviously the population's gone way up.
Population's gone up, but our numbers have, I don't want to say we've kept pace with the population, but the resources that we have available now are so much greater than they were then. We've always had great relationships with the surrounding law enforcement agencies, so we rely on each other. And when we are in graveyard and we have 3 or 4 guys, back in the day, we knew that our backup was across the bridge in Yuba City or here in Marysville. But now we have doubled. Most shifts have double that now. So in the resources that we have, the vehicles, the computers in our cars, it's just.
Yeah, it's very different.
It's very different, yeah. But, the basic principle is the same, protect the public safety.
So that initial job, patrol,
Mhm.
how long did you do that?
Well, I promoted fairly quickly as sergeant. I did patrol. I'm probably you're gonna catch me here because
I'm not gonna check your resume, I
I think
promise.
in 2002 I promoted to sergeant, so I was on patrol for 4 years. 2 of those years were spent on patrol. I'm sorry, and then after 2 years I went into investigations.
Okay.
So I went about 2 years on. I went into investigations. I was on the SWAT team, and I was promoted to sergeant out of investigations, and went back to patrol as a sergeant in the foothills for a while, working for a few years in the foothills, since that's where I lived. And then I was assigned to investigations again as a sergeant, which was a great job, supervising the detectives in there.
Okay, so when you say investigations, you mean folks that are specifically assigned to do detective type work?
Yeah, so all felony investigations, and not all, most felony investigations that require follow-up are sent to our detectives in the investigations unit. And as a sergeant in there, traditionally, supervise a couple of deputies. And I think we had 2 sergeants, maybe 3 in there at any given time, and then they would supervise a couple of deputies who were assigned to investigations. So, and as a sergeant, anytime a major felony came in, a homicide, a violent assault, then you would take the lead and investigate a role in that.
Okay, so how do they decide? So patrol responds out to a call. When and how do they decide, like, gosh, we really need the investigations unit to pick this up for us?
Well,
because I'm assuming they handle most stuff. They get called out and they just handle it.
They do. So there is a bit of a criteria. So I mean, if it's a shooting, if it's a very serious assault, a sexual assault, sexual child assault,
Yeah.
the investigations unit. So we have a matrix that if it meets a certain criteria, the investigations are automatically called. So the on-call detective would be notified, hey, we have this case, and normally there is some discretion depending on the case and if there is in fact any follow-up. For instance, if we have a drive-by shooting and there's no information, no leads to follow up on, they may not respond out that night. But for the most part, anytime that they get that call, they're coming out, in the middle of the night, and they're busy. That's a busy unit. Our investigations division, they get called out a lot.
What do those numbers look like? Investigation unit and patrol, like how many, I know sergeants, deputies?
So, yeah, there are currently 2 sergeants assigned to investigations, and they each lead a team of 3 and 1 4 investigators. Then we have community service officers assigned to those teams as well.
Okay.
Operations patrol, we have 31 deputies out on the streets in patrol cars, and then 7 in the hills. So, we've come a long ways with our staffing levels.
Yeah, that's great. So 38 total patrol.
Yeah, 38.
Not at all at one time.
Yeah, and not to sidetrack here, but and that's one thing that people don't understand are the different divisions within the sheriff's department. We have corrections division, we have support services, we have communications and records, investigations, operations, several different divisions, marine enforcement, court security, and they're all, they have different allocated positions for each. So
Yeah, I always, cry a little bit for you when I see your budget and all those different, a budget for each of those different units and, the complexity to administrate that.
Yeah, and that's why I have a finance division as well. So, they do a tremendous job. And I got some advice a long time ago: is surround yourself by smart people. And it's not hard for me to find people that are smarter than me. So, no, I'm kidding. And that's what I've done. I've hired and appointed, and most of those people are here. They were born and raised here, and they work for this department, and they're just great people. And you surround yourself with those people, and you're going to be successful.
That's a great thing here in Yuba County. I feel the same way about the DA's office. It's just such a great team. They do such great work,
Yeah.
and your crew does too. And management's tough, but they're out there actually where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Absolutely. So, I guess it's my turn to interview you.
Well,
So,
I suppose. We got about halfway through your career.
Halfway through my career. Yeah. We'll finish next time on the rest. So, you were an attorney for Sutter County DA's office for how long?
That was almost a decade.
Almost.
Before I came over here to Yuba.
And I'm not familiar with, so you have ADA 1s, 2s, 3s, how does that work compared to Sutter County?
So they call them deputy district attorneys up and down the state, just like you've got deputy sheriffs, we have deputy DAs.
So you guys copied us?
We did, we copied you. Well, come on, we're both in the California Constitution, right where it says thou shalt have an elected sheriff, an elected DA, and we'll let the people guess what the third one is. It's the assessor. And, people are like, wait, who's the assessor? What do they do? But really, when you think about it, it makes great sense because it's, the two jobs in the county that are part of the executive branch and that are in charge of, enforcing the law and putting people in jail. You want those people to be elected and accountable to the people. And then the assessor's the one who decides how much your house is worth and therefore how much you're going to get taxed.
And Steve Duckles is our assessor. He's a good guy.
He's a good guy. And, but yeah, so hey, we're all three of us right there in the California Constitution.
So how did you started out obviously as a deputy district attorney 1?
With Sutter County, I did. My first job out of law school was I clerked for a federal judge up in Alaska.
Oh, nice.
Which was a great gig. He was just a brilliant guy. I learned a lot, and they call it clerkship, which you're already a lawyer, but they call you a clerk. So I worked for him for almost 2 years, and actually ended up doing a lot of work out of California because he was semi-retired, and so he could take cases from anywhere in the United States as a federal judge. So we took a lot from the Northern District of New York and the Eastern District of California, which happens to be right here.
Yeah.
So that was the first job. But when I came back in 2009, during the middle of the Great Recession, or the beginning of it, I should say, because Sutter County had 3 deputy DA positions open up. So started as a 1, reviewing, driving on suspended license and drunk driving and simple batteries, petty thefts, things like that. At the beginning of your career, you don't touch felonies like those commercial burglaries where you entered back in the day when you entered Walmart with the intent to steal and you got a felony out of it. And we didn't get to touch those initially.
So you worked, how long did you have to work the misdemeanor cases and the infractions before you moved up?
There wasn't anything set. It was probably 6 to 8 months, and the assistant DA at the time, Jana McClung, came into a meeting. She goes, "Any of you interested in doing felony embezzlement cases?" And I, of course, jumped out of my seat and raised my hand because it said felony. It was about 8 months in that I got to start handling what I now know was, the felony no one else wanted to handle because it involved looking at spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while, and then started getting regular felony type work, and eventually did the domestic violence assignment, and then sexual assault for about 5 years straight between the two of them. So it was,
Yeah.
pretty quick. Experience comes really quick, but like you were saying earlier about how a deputy in 2 years picks up the same experience as 10 years in a small city.
Right.
It was the same here. You don't have the depth to keep people in misdemeanors forever. It's not long before people are trying homicides.
And you, I know for a fact you work some pretty serious human trafficking cases, things like that over Sutter County.
Yeah, really major stabbings, things of that nature.
So do you miss being a deputy DA? Or, because it's a different job, right?
Okay, so I do, and yes, I miss it, but at the same time, getting to run the office and build a team, because that's more or less what you and I do now, right?
Sure.
Is we build a team that does amazing work, and that is really, really satisfying. So I do miss the trial work a little bit, but I did too this year. I couldn't help myself, and that's good. Being the boss, you can kind of poach the cases that you want. So I got to try an attempted murder of the CHP officer,
Right.
The one that ended up in the foothills, and then another one that was a special circumstances murder.
Mhm. The one from Wheeland.
No, Shiloh Sorbello did that one. No, this one was the Country Club Court
Oh,
homicide. That it was special because the man, Lawrence Lang, had actually served 30 years for murdering someone else back in the late 80s, but parole decided that he was safe to be out in the community again.
Yes.
And,
Rehabilitated.
yeah, he was not. And he proved it, so he's now doing life without parole.
Yeah. So I know you have 2 young kids. My kids are grown.
Yeah.
How concerned are you with their future here in California and
Oh,
with the
my
way that the
goodness.
state is going?
Okay, now you just started like a 2-hour podcast.
Yeah, I know. It gives people something to look forward to. Right?
Okay, so for a future episode, I'm pretty concerned about where California's headed. Essentially since realignment started, which was 2012, we've kind of entered into this big experiment with public safety. And I think there were good reasons behind what they were trying to do initially in 2012. We were in the middle of a Great Recession. A 3-judge panel had told the prisons that they had to empty it out to 120,000. So Jerry Brown at the time, he faced it was a problem that he had to solve. So there's good intent, I think, going into it, but we're at a point where there's very little consequence to crime, and it's almost impossible to force someone into treatment who's committing crime because of addiction. You remember the day, it wasn't that long ago, someone get caught with methamphetamine, and we could tell them in court, say, look, this is a felony. Do you want to get treatment, or do you want to go to prison?
That was Prop 36, is that correct?
Prop 36 was one of them. Drug court was another route.
It actually worked.
Yeah, no, drug court had a really good success record. Prop 36, maybe not as much. But the threat of going to prison caused a lot of people to look at that 6 months in a Salvation Army program and go, yeah, maybe I'll do that. And now it's just a misdemeanor to possess.
Yeah.
If they see the inside of a jail, they might get, you know, a slap on the wrist and 12 months of summary probation. And so if that's your baseline and you're like, hey, would you be interested in going to 6 months of residential treatment, or would you like your slap on the wrist? They you know, say,
Slap it, please.
slap it, please.
Yeah.
I'll take another fine and I'll move on and go get my next high.
Yeah, you're right. This discussion we could have for 2 hours, because it actually
At least.
it changed the way that we do law enforcement. Literally, I mean, you know, as far as, you know, working informants, doing things like that, it just took away that accountability piece. You know, so that, like you said, you know, well, do you want to roll on your buddy or roll on your dealer, or do you want to get slapped on the hand, right? So you know, there's no way you're going to turn somebody and work it up to a bigger case, right?
Right. I used to talk to my attorneys about we provide opportunities for people to rehabilitate. And that used to be true when there was, well, I guess it's still true, but what I've added to that since is we have to provide an opportunity and incentive
Yeah.
to get people to rehabilitate, because without the incentive, I mean, let's face it, we're offering drug treatments like carrots or broccoli or Brussels sprouts or something. It's really healthy, but you
It
know,
doesn't taste very good.
it just, or, you know, it's if you're used to eating candy,
Right.
you're not gonna run out and be like, oh, good, I get to go to drug treatment, and that's what the threat of prison used to do. So you know, I worry about California if it continues on this trajectory. Like, look at San Francisco. And to me, that's the canary in the coal mine here in California. Like, Westfield has closed their mall. And I mean, we're talking about malls with high-end stores that used to do millions of dollars in sales. Hilton stopped making payments on 2 of their hotels.
And
down
they're
there.
icons down in the Bay Area.
Yeah,
right?
and it just, like, it's failed.
Yeah.
And how long it's gonna take our state
To admit that they were wrong.
to admit that they were wrong. Because, you know, as both of us being men, it's hard to admit when we're wrong. But, you know, we need to do it. Like I said, I think that initially realignment, it was well-intentioned. It was trying to solve a problem that the court imposed. But it hasn't worked.
Right.
I mean, we're a decade into this, and our homeless population has exploded. Addicts aren't actually getting treatment, and theft is just completely out of hand.
Well, I think that is maybe a matter of opinion as well, and I agree with you 100%, but there are those out there that are still saying it's working. Look at our prison numbers, they're way down.
Yeah.
It's because they're out here, you know, and we're dealing with them on a daily. So,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, I do see some value. I see value in, you know, programming in our jail to try to give people avenues to change their behavior, to modify their behavior, to develop some skills. So maybe another topic for, you know, for a future podcast is some ideas about programming. And, you know, I've had one as far as having discussions with, you know, the pipe fitters union about, you know, maybe a program where we can get somebody's skills and maybe get them certified and get them out in the labor, you know, in the labor force. And I just think that a lot of people just, and I don't know, you know, but to me, it seems like they've kind of lost their way. They've lost their sense of being and lost their sense of pride, and maybe giving them something to be prideful about again.
Work is essential to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential. Now that's a great program. I'd love to talk about all those different rehabilitation efforts, because I mean, ultimately, kind of our first line is to return someone to the community so they can be productive.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's goal. You know, the first goal, just like when you're parenting children, you know.
You want them to be productive members of society.
You want them to be productive members of society. If they make a mistake and they need discipline, that's sort of what it's about. It's only when they just won't stop stealing, or they won't stop, you know, whatever the crime is, or they're dangerous. That really, I mean, what alternative do we have at that point besides locking them up?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad, but you know, I don't want to live in a world where we let people do crazy stuff because to the rest of us, right? Where they just do crazy stuff all the time and ruin a community because we feel bad that they're locked up for their choices.
Sure. Well, I don't know where we're at on time. How are we doing on
I
time?
don't know.
We've been talking a long time. We're still good?
I think we're fine.
Okay.
So, for those of you who are tuning into this first episode, we've kind of been all over the place.
Yeah.
We've given you a little bit of interview. We've talked a little bit about different topics that we want to come back to, and maybe do a fuller, more focused discussion on particular things. We want to hear from you. What is it that you want to hear about?
So yeah, Katie Goodson at co.yuba.ca.us. Email her any questions you might have, or I'll send them on Facebook.
Katie with a Y, right?
Katie with a Y.
It's actually Kay Goodson.
Oh, Kay Goodson. I'm sorry, there's not Katie. It's Kay Goodson. Goodson.
Yeah, or on Facebook,
Or on Facebook.
Instagram, or I'm not sure. Can you get that many characters into Instagram?
We won't be able to answer them all, but at least may give us some interesting topics to discuss in future episodes. So, what do you guys have going on right now that's exciting in your office? Anything?
Oh my goodness, I'm looking for an attorney.
Oh, that's
So
right.
if you're out there and you've graduated from law school, I'm looking for an attorney, a new deputy DA to help fight crime here in Yuba. That's probably the most exciting thing I've got going on right now is a job. I hope this gets produced before I hire someone. Yeah.
But never a dull moment. Obviously.
No, there's never a dull moment. I mean, you read the newspaper and all the horrible things people do to each other.
Yeah.
Well, first a cop shows up, does an investigation, writes a report, and then that comes to my office. And, 80% of the time it results in us filing a case. The other 20% of the time, we have to stay tuned to find out what happens to the other 20% of cases.
And yeah, it's probably, you say that and it sounds like a big number, but it's not because of the circumstances. We have victims that change their mind, victims that are uncooperative, a lot of things happen in cases.
And we've got a system that's based on, well, at your level, something called probable cause.
Sure.
For an arrest, which is a strong suspicion. But once it gets to the DA, we don't file a case unless we know we can prove it beyond a reasonable doubt based on the evidence. And, those are two very different standards, and, it's a miracle. It's only 20%.
Yeah, you're right.
when you really think about it. But you guys do great work, which is why, we do file so much.
I have to do, my staff has just been great, and I know that, 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, I had some meetings in the state of our river bottom. Simpson Lane looked like a city down there with tents and.
Yeah, it was like Mad Max.
Yeah, and then, underneath the bridge was the same way, and man, I just wasn't proud to say I was from Yuba County, right? So
Yeah.
I had a meeting with my staff, I had a meeting with code enforcement and said, hey, Jeremy Strang's in charge of code enforcement, said, Jeremy, how about if I give you 2 deputies assigned to you all the time? Because code enforcement has always done a great job, but they can only do so much,
Yeah. We need to bring him on.
Jeremy, yeah,
Yeah.
we will. But, we can show you before and after pictures, and we still have a lot of work to do, but those guys have done a tremendous job of cleaning up the county, cleaning up those areas, and, the board of supervisors, county councils, so all work together, to come up with an ordinance that we can enforce in regards to those encampments. And it's been night and day difference. You drive down Simpson Lane, we still see the trash piles, we still see, for here and there, but
not nearly as much.
No, it's night and day difference, and and it's just staff, those those deputies that are assigned to code enforcement, and all of our deputies, just really saying enough is enough, and we're going to try to take back our county.
Yeah.
And we're still, like I said, we still have a long ways to go, but and until we figure out this problem with the homelessness, I don't know that we'll ever be able to totally
No.
get rid of it. Because
Poor will always be with us.
Yeah.
To some extent or another. But,
but we've done a lot of good, and Costco is opening up next month, which is exciting.
Yes.
And all the naysayers who said Costco will never go to Yuba County, well, get your membership.
Yeah, get your membership.
And come shopping.
I'm
But-
super excited for that.
Yeah, and, you know, we've really focused on that Northville corridor right there, and, you know, because of some changes in legislation, we're a little handcuffed as to what we can do with, you know, with, in some cases, but I think for the most part, we've cleaned it up, and we're gonna continue to do that.
Maybe our next episode of Yuba Justice will do it from Costco.
From Costco.
Maybe.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
don't know. It's a,
Get some hot dogs.
some hot dogs. Well, we should probably wrap it up. But we're really excited about this because we know they're just, again, there's so many stories, there's so many things going on, and you know, Facebook is great.
But we don't report crimes on Facebook, right?
Right, we don't report.
Call the sheriff's department.
Call the sheriff's department. So it's so true. Yeah, please, if you've got a crime to report, call. Don't just post it to Facebook, because if you want us to solve it and prosecute, then those are kind of necessary. So stay tuned for way more to continuing discussion. Please send us ideas for things that you want to hear about. You kind of have a taste of it now, and looking forward to more.
Take care and be safe.